The church was packed. Flowers lined the aisle, candles flickered, and a soft murmur of condolences filled the air. Everyone, family, friends, even distant acquaintances, had come to mourn me, to mourn Clara Johnson, they believed, who had supposedly passed away just a week ago. I stood at the back, hidden in the shadows, feeling the strange mix of anger and amusement swirl inside me. My own sister had planned this funeral for her inheritance. She had called everyone, told stories, ensured that every detail screamed finality. And here I was, alive. As the pastor began his eulogy, I could hear my sister whispering, a triumphant smile clear on her face. I clenched my fists, my heart hammering, not from fear, but from the raw realization of betrayal. Every word she spoke was a knife she thought had already struck. I stepped closer, not yet fully revealed, just enough for her to catch the flicker of my presence in the pews. Her eyes widened, disbelief washing over her face, and the smile faltered. The room seemed to freeze. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Clara?" someone whispered, stunned. Yes, it was me. Alive. Watching. Waiting. This was the moment that changed everything. My life, my family, and the secrets I had buried within me for decades were about to collide with the truth. I realized then that survival had shaped me, not just my own choices, but the cruelty, greed, and mistakes of those I loved. I had to step forward, but I didn't rush. I let the tension build, the shock settle, before making my entrance. Every eye in the room was on me, every secret weighing heavier in the air. I was no longer the Clara they thought they had lost. I was stronger, wiser, unforgiving, yet ready to reclaim what was mine. And in that moment, as my sister's expression twisted from triumph to horror, I understood a simple truth. Life had taught me lessons that death never could. I wasn't always the woman who could walk into a room where everyone thought I was dead and command their attention. I grew up in a small, tight-knit neighborhood where life was never easy and opportunities were even scarcer. My parents worked tirelessly, often leaving me and my siblings to figure out the world on our own. I learned early that survival meant more than just existing. It meant understanding people, their intentions, and the invisible games they played. My sister, the same one who would later plan my funeral, was always ambitious. Even as children, I could see the hunger in her eyes, the way she calculated every interaction like a chess move. School wasn't much of a refuge either. I was smart, curious, and stubborn, qualities that made me a target for those who thrived on conformity. I remember one incident vividly. A group of girls had cornered me in the courtyard, mocking my hair, my clothes, even my accent. I could have run, cried, or begged for mercy. Instead, I stared back, unflinching, and walked away. That moment, small as it seemed, planted the seed of the Clara who would never bow to fear or shame. By the time I was 16, life had already tested me in ways most adults never face. My mother fell ill, and the responsibility of keeping the household together fell to me. I cooked, cleaned, managed bills, and cared for my younger siblings, all while keeping up with school. There were nights I cried silently in my room, wondering if the weight of the world would crush me. But somehow, it didn't. Every tear, every struggle hardened me, shaped me into someone who could endure far more than anyone imagined. And yet, resilience came with its price. It made me wary, guarded, calculating. I learned to measure people, to anticipate betrayal before it struck. Little did I know that those lessons, learned in the quiet struggles of youth, would become my most powerful weapons decades later. By the time I left home to pursue my career, I carried with me not just ambition, but a quiet certainty. No one would ever control me, not my circumstances, not my family, and certainly not fate. Leaving home was both liberating and terrifying. I stepped into the city with nothing but a small suitcase, a handful of dreams, and the lessons life had ruthlessly taught me. The streets were busy, the air thick with ambition, and every face seemed to hold a story I had yet to learn. My first job was humble, an administrative assistant at a small company. I arrived early, stayed late, and paid attention to every detail. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I learned quickly that respect wasn't given. It was earned through persistence, excellence, and, at times, quiet cunning. Yet even as I worked tirelessly, family ties pulled at me. My sister, always competitive, began weaving subtle manipulations. She would call, half apologetic, half demanding, reminding me of obligations, hinting at secrets she controlled. I realized then that family, the people who were supposed to support you unconditionally, could also be the ones to wound you most deeply. The lessons of my youth, resilience, observation, caution, proved invaluable. I learned to listen carefully, to notice the pauses between words, the flickers of emotion that revealed intentions. And while others saw me as simply polite or quiet, I was quietly calculating, preparing for the day when I would never be vulnerable again. Amid the struggles of work and family tension, I found small victories. A client complimented my thoroughness, a project succeeded because of my insight, and slowly I began to build confidence in my own abilities. I realized that independence wasn't just about leaving home, it was about owning my decisions, my mistakes, and my triumphs. And through it all, the shadow of betrayal lingered. I knew that the same sister who once cornered me in childhood would not hesitate to use every opportunity to advance her own agenda. That knowledge didn't scare me, it steeled me. Each challenge, each small act of manipulation became a training ground, shaping the woman who would one day face her own funeral and walk in alive. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. I had begun to settle into my work, gaining respect and carving a place for myself when the first real failure struck. A project I had poured my heart into collapsed due to a partner's deception. The blame was subtle, carefully hidden, but I knew the truth. I had been undermined, and the lesson was harsh. Trust, even in colleagues, is earned, never assumed. At the same time, the family I thought I could rely on showed cracks I had only glimpsed before. My sister, emboldened by ambition, began maneuvering to control not just the household wealth, but even the perceptions of those around her. Whispers, half-truths, and calculated lies became part of my daily life. Yet I didn't confront her immediately. I observed. I learned. Patience, I realized, could be more powerful than anger. Amid these trials, I discovered an inner strength I hadn't fully acknowledged. Nights of silent tears became nights of planning. Each setback, each betrayal, each act of injustice taught me resilience. I learned to protect myself, to anticipate danger, and to recognize allies from adversaries. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling week at work, I sat alone in a cafe reflecting on my journey. The mistakes, the betrayals, the near defeats, they had all shaped me. I realized that life's harshest lessons were preparing me for something far greater than any immediate victory or defeat. They were shaping me into someone who could endure even when the world believed she had fallen. By the time I returned home that evening, I understood something crucial. Strength isn't just about surviving. It's about growing from every wound, about transforming pain into wisdom. That lesson became my mantra, and little did I know, the ultimate test, one that would involve deceit, inheritance, and a funeral that wasn't mine, was still waiting in the shadows. By the time I reached my 30s, I had learned one undeniable truth. Life does not wait for you to be ready. Opportunities pass, mistakes linger, and the people you trust may betray you at the most unexpected moments. I faced a crossroads, one that would test not just my courage, but my moral compass. My career had finally gained traction. I was recognized for my insight and integrity, yet a proposal arrived that promised financial security at a steep cost. A powerful figure in the company offered me a chance to rise higher than I had ever dreamed, but only if I compromised my values, overlooked unethical practices, and silently allowed injustice to continue. I thought of my younger self, the girl who had fought in the schoolyard, the teen who had carried the burden of family responsibilities, the woman who had endured betrayal without faltering. Could I betray that Clara? Could I sacrifice the lessons of resilience and honesty for the sake of comfort? The answer was clear. I walked away. I chose integrity over immediate reward, even though the path forward was uncertain and steep. That decision would later define the person I became, someone who could stand firm against greed, manipulation, and even familial treachery. And speaking of family, the tensions with my sister escalated. She began scheming more openly, whispering half-truths to relatives and subtly undermining my relationships. I could have reacted with fury, but experience had taught me patience. I learned to anticipate her moves, to act strategically, and to remain calm even when confronted with deceit. During this period, I also discovered the power of mentorship and community. I found allies in unexpected places, friends, colleagues, even strangers, whose guidance and support reminded me that strength does not mean standing alone. It means knowing when to fight, when to wait, and when to seek help. By the end of my 30s, I was no longer just surviving. I was shaping my destiny. Each choice I made, each betrayal I endured, and each victory I achieved had molded me into a woman capable of facing even the most audacious plots. And yet, the ultimate test, one that would challenge my courage and reveal family secrets in the most shocking way imaginable, still loomed ahead. The tension had been building for years, but nothing prepared me for the storm that arrived one quiet evening. My sister had begun whispering rumors, manipulating family members, and creating divisions that threatened not only relationships, but the very legacy of our family. She had eyes on the inheritance, our parents' estate, and she was willing to bend anyone and anything to claim it. I had long suspected her ambition, but witnessing it unfold so brazenly was a shock. Letters disappeared, conversations were twisted, and allies I thought I could trust were suddenly hesitant, uncertain. I realized then that survival alone was not enough. I needed strategy, foresight, and courage. Late one night, I sat in my study, reviewing every interaction, every betrayal, every subtle manipulation. Each detail mattered. I began to understand patterns, to anticipate her next move. My sister thought she had control, but I had the advantage of patience, observation, and the lessons life had carved into me over 6 decades. It was during this period that I also learned the importance of silence. Speaking too soon would alert her, giving her room to react. I had to wait, carefully, for the right moment, a moment that would expose her ambitions while keeping my own power intact. As the days turned into weeks, I prepared quietly. Documents, conversations, and hidden truths were all noted and stored. I realized that knowledge was power, and timing was everything. This preparation, painstaking as it was, set the stage for the most dramatic revelation of my life. The moment of truth would not just be about exposing my sister. It would be about reclaiming my life, asserting my strength, and demonstrating that resilience is not simply enduring, it is overcoming with dignity, intelligence, and courage. I had known for months that my sister's ambition would stop at nothing, but nothing could have prepared me for the audacity of her plan. A funeral for someone still very much alive, me. The thought was almost laughable if it weren't so darkly calculating. It began with subtle manipulations. She whispered to relatives, planted seeds of doubt about my health, and ensured that everyone believed I was gravely ill. Her charm and social influence were terrifyingly effective. Invitations were sent, flowers were ordered, the venue booked. I watched from a distance as her vision of triumph unfolded. Yet, I was not powerless. Every detail she left unattended, every assumption she made, became my advantage. I moved quietly, preparing for the day I would walk into the room they all believed was mine to leave forever. Each step was measured, each plan precise. The day arrived. The church was filled with mourners, their faces solemn, their whispers heavy with grief. My sister's smile was radiant, triumphant. She believed she had won. And then I stepped into the shadows at the back, letting the room feel the absence of the departed before revealing the truth. Her expression shifted from delight to disbelief, a silent scream trapped behind her lips. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Every lie, every manipulation, every secret she had counted on suddenly unraveled. The power she thought she held evaporated in an instant, replaced by shock and awe. I did not rush forward immediately. I allowed the tension to build, the weight of revelation to settle over them all. Then, finally, I stepped into the light, reclaiming not just my presence, but my narrative. The woman they had believed lost was alive, unbroken, and stronger than they could have imagined. In that moment, I understood fully. Life's cruel lessons, betrayals, and hardships had prepared me for this very scene. Justice, not violence, was my weapon, and timing, patience, and resilience were my armor. The church was silent, the air thick with tension. My sister's triumphant smile had faded, replaced by a flicker of panic as eyes turned toward me. I walked down the aisle slowly, deliberately, letting every footstep echo in the stunned silence. Every whisper, every glance, every gasp was a testament to the web of deceit she had spun, and how completely it had unraveled. When I reached the front, I looked directly at her. "Surprised?" I asked softly, letting my calmness contrast with the chaos around us. She opened her mouth, likely to defend herself, but no words came. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of truth. Family members, friends, even distant acquaintances turned to witness the confrontation. My sister's voice finally emerged, trembling and defensive, trying to justify her ambition, her manipulations, and the lies she had spread. I listened quietly, my gaze steady, letting her words expose her own character more effectively than any accusation I could make. Then I spoke, not with anger, but with precision. I recounted the ways she had tried to manipulate the family, the inheritance, and even my life. Every betrayal, every secret, every hidden agenda was laid bare, and the silence that followed was deafening. People who had been unsure, hesitant, or misled now understood the full story. My sister realized that her power was gone, not because I had confronted her with violence or rage, but because I had taken control of the truth. Her plans, built on deception and greed, had failed spectacularly. And in that failure, I found an unexpected satisfaction, the justice of patience and resilience. By the time I left the church, the lesson was clear to everyone present. Life had shaped me into someone who could endure the darkest plots, navigate betrayal with intelligence, and emerge not only unbroken, but victorious. And in that moment, I knew that my life, my choices, and my strength would guide me through whatever came next. The days after the confrontation were quieter, yet charged with reflection. Family gatherings were tense at first, but truth has a way of clarifying relationships. Some relatives who had doubted me began to see my strength, while others, who had been misled by my sister, approached cautiously, seeking understanding. I spent time reconnecting with those who mattered, building bridges that had been strained by years of secrecy and ambition. I realized that forgiveness was not weakness, it was a conscious choice to free myself from the weight of resentment. Some chose reconciliation, others did not, and that was their decision. My peace did not depend on their actions. In the privacy of my own home, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The girl who had faced bullies, the young woman burdened by family responsibility, the professional challenged by deceitful colleagues, and finally, the woman confronting betrayal within her own family. Each iteration of Clara had prepared me for this moment. Every trial had shaped me, every setback had strengthened me. I also recognized the importance of documenting these lessons. Life's trials had taught me resilience, observation, patience, and courage. I knew that by sharing my story, others might find guidance, hope, and the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, strength can be forged. Most importantly, I realized that reclaiming my life was not just about confronting those who sought to manipulate me. It was about embracing my own power, making choices aligned with my values, and living fully and unapologetically. The inheritance my sister coveted was insignificant compared to the wealth of wisdom, experience, and self-respect I now possessed. By the end of these reflections, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The woman they had tried to erase was alive, whole, and stronger than ever. The shadows of the past had shaped me, but they no longer controlled me. I stood at the edge of my life as it had been, looking back at every twist, every betrayal, every lesson that had brought me to this point. The funeral that never was, the deceit of my sister, the trials of youth and adulthood, they were all threads in the tapestry of my resilience. I realized that strength is not born from comfort or ease. It is forged in fire, hammered by adversity, and polished by reflection. Every challenge I had faced, every disappointment endured, had sculpted me into someone capable of standing tall, even when the world expected me to falter. In reconnecting with my family, I learned that forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. Some accepted my hand in reconciliation, others did not, and that was their path to walk. My peace was not dependent on them, it was my own to claim. I also understood the value of truth. Lies, manipulation, and greed may temporarily hold sway, but the clarity of honesty always prevails. By embracing my reality and confronting deception head-on, I reclaimed not just my presence, but my narrative. As I looked toward the future, I carried with me lessons that others might one day find useful. Resilience is cultivated, courage is practiced, patience is a weapon, and integrity is the ultimate inheritance. No amount of wealth, power, or influence can replace the strength of a life fully lived with awareness and purpose. The woman who had once been vulnerable, who had feared betrayal and loss, had become someone unshakable. And while life would continue to bring challenges, I knew I had the tools to meet them with clarity, courage, and grace. In the end, I was alive, not just in body, but in spirit, wisdom, and power. The world may have tried to write my story for me, but I had claimed the pen, and the final chapter was mine alone.